We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, where we get stuck into issues that we need to look at in depth. Nothing is off the table and no one's going to be cancelled for saying what they think. Keeping me company today is former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire, and here's what we've got coming up on the show. Travel carnage at British airports could last for months. Holidays are put at risk by unacceptable cancelled flights and airport chaos. Around 3/5 of 11 to 18-year-olds worry about their parents not having enough money. As the cost of living crisis rages on, could this affect anxiety levels in kids? And what do you need to do to get onto the Queen's Birthday Honours List? We'll speak with an expert to find out. She'll also give us her thoughts on who she thinks has made it this year. And stay tuned in for some light relief at the end of the show. That's what we're up to for the next hour, but what do you need to talk about? Email the programme, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews. First, though, it's time for the GB News headlines. A very good afternoon to you. It's just 1 minute past 2. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Chancellor says that the plan unveiled last week to help with the cost of living crisis will make an enormous difference for the most vulnerable households. The consumer group Which says more than 1 in 10 people, though, have skipped meals due to rising food prices. They say surging living costs mean 57% of us are being forced to make adjustments, including cutting back on essentials, taking out loans or borrowing from family and friends. Rishi Sunak says he's aware that these are difficult times, but believes that millions of families across the country will benefit from the support put in place.
Last week we announced £15 billion of new support to help with the cost of living, with a third of all households, the most vulnerable, receiving around £1,200 in help. But there's also support available for everyone, including £400 off energy bills in the autumn. We said we would stand by the British people through this challenging time, and that's what we delivered last week.
A senior Ukrainian official says the latest European sanctions on Russia are not enough. The EU agreed last night to cut 90% of oil imports from Russia by the end of this year. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen says that the EU plans to fully cut all imports in the near future.
Now left over is around about 10 or 11% that are covered by the southern DRUZHBA. And indeed, here we have agreed this is for the moment being exempted. We have agreed to that the Council will revert to the topic as soon as possible in one way or the other. So this is a topic where we'll come back to and where we will still have to work on. But it is a big step forward, what we did today.
Conservative MP John Stevenson says he's taken the appropriate action to facilitate a confidence vote in the Prime Minister. The MP for Carlisle says continuing criticism, revelations and questions are debilitating for the government. Earlier today, former Tory Minister Andrea Leadsom told constituents that unacceptable failings of leadership found in Sue Gray's Partygate report cannot be tolerated and are the responsibility of the Prime Minister. She says each Conservative MP must now decide on the right course of action that will restore confidence in our government. 3 Conservative MPs have openly called for Mr Johnson to resign following Sue Gray's report. TUI Airways have announced they're cancelling 6 flights a day from Manchester Airport until the end of next month. EasyJet and British Airways have also been cancelling flights, while passengers at airports like Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester and Bristol are all reporting long delays. The aviation industry is suffering from staff shortages after thousands were let go during the pandemic. The Shadow Transport Secretary says the government didn't ensure airports had required staff levels.
Look, the government had been warned many months ago that losing skilled workers from the aviation industry would cause significant delays when people started going back on holiday. They knew that airports did not have the staff for security, for ground control, for cabin crew, and they knew that people would be going on holiday over the half term. So it's simply not good enough that people are having to wait hours and hours to get through security, and in some instances missing their flights and their holidays entirely.
Well, we reached out to the government, who said they've changed the law over training new employees, which should help the industry fill vacancies more quickly. But the government made it clear that the aviation industry was responsible for making sure they have enough staff and said the sector must step up recruitment. You're now up to date on GB News, and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Alex for We Need to Talk About. Now, before we get started with today's big juicy stories, GB News has just been told that plans to send hundreds of asylum seekers to a former RAF base in North Yorkshire are being delayed amidst a legal challenge. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has been investigating and is live at the base now. Mark, what's going on?
Well, I don't think they're quite celebrating here in the village of Linton-on-Ouse yet. It is a pause, but we're told a temporary pause, and that the Home Office is still determined that this base should house up to 1,500 asylum seekers. Now, the first of those asylum seekers, a group of about 60, were due to arrive today. It's being phased in. That was the plan, at least, from the Home Office. But because of a legal challenge, an initial legal challenge that has been lodged with the Home Office is now assessing that potential legal action coming from the local authority here in this area of North Yorkshire. Also, they tell us that there are 1 or 2 logistical concerns that they're dealing with, which is also added to the delays. So those plans on halt at the moment. But they've issued a statement, Alex, in which they say, as we continue to work on the plan for the Asylum Reception Centre in Linton-on-Ouse, which will be as self-sufficient as possible, we continue to listen to community feedback. It goes on to say, we maintain the site is urgently needed to provide essential asylum accommodation and will assist as we end the use of asylum seekers using hotels at a cost, as we've said before, of about £5 million a day. In fact, we reported yesterday and today that we've been told some 30,000 hotel rooms are being requisitioned by the Home Office every day to house these asylum seekers. So, of course, the government is looking for other options. They're controversial, of course, when you talk about using a former RAF base that is right next to this village. Effectively, the village runs along the perimeter fence of the base, and 1,500 asylum seekers in a village with a population of 700 would more than double the population. And there's nothing to do in this village, really. There are no amenities. It's a village hall here. There's a shop just across the road. But apart from that, there's nothing to do. And the very thought of significant numbers of young men, and they will be single young men, hanging about the village with nothing to do, fills the people here with a degree of dread.
Yeah, no, you can understand why. Mark, I understand you've got the latest figures as well for channel crossings.
Yes, indeed. Well, this just adds to the issue. We've been told that at least 280 people have crossed the channel today, and the operations are still ongoing in the English Channel. Some 8 small boats have been picked up by Border Force and lifeboats in the channel. They've been brought to that makeshift reception centre in Dover for processing. Now, our local producer down in Dover has told us that 50 of those 280 people are Albanians. Not quite sure what war zone they're fleeing, but 50, we're told, are Albanians. They will be processed like everyone else and enter the asylum system. And that's another 280 people who'll have to be housed in either hotel accommodation or up to bases like this one in Linton-on-Ouse.
Mark Wright, thank you ever so much. A crisis that continues to seem to spiral out of control. Well, Backlog Britain strikes again. If you've managed to renew your passport, give yourself 10 points. If you've also managed to get a train on time to the airport, that's 10 more. If your flight wasn't cancelled, another 10. And if you weren't delayed, drowning in a sea of terminal dwellers curled up in fetal positions on the airport floor using hand luggage for headrests while feral children scream their little lungs out, that's a full 50 points. Plus bonus points for getting your baggage and having the full slate of airport amenities available to you. That would take you up to 100. Anyone get top scores? Probably not, because the UK has become one of the most useless countries on earth, as if an Armageddon has struck, wiping out all competence. It was obvious shutting down travel for the best part of 2 years, giving people travel credits to use later, would see a rush on holiday making. And it was obvious too, wasn't it, that a 4-day bank holiday weekend coinciding with half-term would be the exact time everyone would want to jet off. But the thing is, all that taxpayers' cash thrown at the travel industry to keep people in jobs has been wanged into the wind by execs, meaning there's now a shortage of willing humans to attend your flights, check in your bags, and make sure planes don't crash into each other. Oh, the feckless, lazy, work-shy, work-from-home culture encouraged during COVID has not gone anywhere, which means neither will you. Forget bon voyage, it's more like non-voyage. Well, GB News Southwest of England reporter Jeff Moody joins me now. Jeff, travel chaos where you are as well today.
Oh, non-voyage indeed. You know, it's been really interesting standing here all day because you see people coming past and you can see the look in their eyes. They're excited, they're all looking forward to their holiday. A lot of them have got their shades on, they've got their shorts on. But then an hour later, if you wander into the terminal building, you see the same people and they're no longer excited. Carnage, they're calling it. Like a zoo, some of them are saying. And it's easy to see why they say it's like a zoo. It's so hot in there. There are people everywhere running around. Nobody quite knows what to do. Bristol Airport say that they've been anticipating this. Yes. They reckon that 300,000 people are due to come through these doors at some point over the last next 2 weeks. But as you say, we always knew this was going to be happening. Half term, 2-day weekend. 4-day weekend, 2 bank holidays, Jubilee as well. So they knew it was going to be busy, but what they didn't anticipate was the fact that so many flights were going to be delayed, so many flights were going to be cancelled, and also people have got wind of this, so they're turning up at the airport early. You might think that's a particularly sensible thing to do, but people are coming here 5-6 hours in advance, thinking that that will help them, but of course that just means they sit around for 5-6 hours, adding to that congestion. So it's quite an unpleasant atmosphere inside there, hence I've come out here. But Bristol Airport has been brilliant. They are working very hard, particularly with their communications. There were some reports earlier on this morning that they weren't really communicating, nobody knew what was going on. Then they issued a phone line for everybody. Of course, everybody then rang the phone line at the same time, so nobody could get through. But they're now saying that things are getting a little bit easier. They're communicating more. We did ask them to communicate with us, but they said they're too busy dealing with customers today, so I don't suppose you can blame them for that. But an interesting side note to that, you were hearing in the news bulletin just now about Which magazine, the consumer group and the website. They're urging the government to get a handle on the situation and to liaise more with the airlines, to liaise more with the airports and to the CAA, and to spend more time and effort getting people rerouted, because this is the problem. Legally, airlines have to reroute you as quickly and with no fuss, as quickly and as with no fuss as they possibly can. Well, when you walk in there, nothing is happening quickly and there is an awful lot of fuss.
Yeah, I can well imagine, rather them than me right now. Jeff, has anyone ever told you look like Ricky Gervais?
No, but I've been told I look like James Corden, which I don't think good. And who's that children's presenter, Mr. Bumble? People say I look a bit like him, but I'll go with Ricky Gervais, thank you.
Yeah,
I'll have his money.
Yeah. You've got a good sense of humour on you as well. Jeff, we needed that today with all the travel chaos going around. Thank you ever so much. GB News' very own Ricky Gervais lookalike Jeff Moody there. Well, travel editor at The Sun, Lisa Minot, joins me now. Lisa, we got Lisa. There she is. We were worried we didn't have you there. I bet you're a woman in high demand. What is going on here? What is really behind this outbreak of chaos with travel? Is it just poor preparation? Is it a lack of staffing? And what can be done about it?
Well, I mean, it very much is at the very heart of it is this lack of staff. And we're talking across the aviation industry. We've got airlines that don't have enough cabin crew. You've got airports that don't have enough security staff. And you've got back of house. So that's your ground handlers, your baggage handlers, cleaners, caterers. They're all struggling in recruiting staff. And really, it's become a bit of a blame game between the airports and the airlines and the government, each blaming each other for this situation. They have not employed enough staff and they can't seem to get staff trained up quickly enough and, more importantly, been vetted for security quickly enough to actually get them on the ground. But obviously it's this particular week that has created a perfect storm for that. I think if you're coming into the airports over the next coming weeks, probably isn't going to be as bad, but there is definitely a huge crisis in terms of the number of people that are employed and how quickly the airports and the airlines are able to actually get people on board.
Now, if you're Joe Public and you're worried about getting caught up in the mire and the misery, what can you do? If you look and it seems like your flight's been delayed or is at risk of being cancelled, is it best not to leave the house when you get to the airport? What are your rights?
I mean, I think definitely if it looks like your flight's been cancelled or if you've been told your flight is cancelled, then definitely you do need to get onto your airline straight away. There's no point going to the airport. If that's the case, you need to get onto your airline straight away. As you say, if you're cancelled at the last minute, they have to give you compensation. So that's up to £220 if you're flying up to 1,500 kilometres and £350 if you're going over 1,500 kilometres. On top of that, the rules state that they should get you on the next available flight to your destination, even if that's not with them, with a rival airline. Now, the issue we have at the moment, the issue we've got this week is, of course, rival airlines don't have seats either. Everyone is fully booked because so many people are trying to go away at the moment. And, of course, if they cancel your flight, you're due a refund as well.
Lisa, thank you ever so much. Lisa Minot there, travel editor for The Sun. If you're stuck at an airport, well, why not stay tuned in to GB News on DAB Radio or, of course, on our app. Former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire is in the studio with me today. Scarlett, I mean, it's shameful, really, isn't it? Backlogs everywhere. Backlog Britain is the term I'm trying to popularise because wherever you look, we're not functioning.
But what's so amazing about it, it's completely predictable. I mean, as you say, we all knew we had this holiday coming up. We all knew it was half term. We knew masses of families would finally go. I mean, that is what you feel sorry for, is these children who've been promised will go away and then spend hours and hours at an airport or you know, just being told to go home. I mean, I can't imagine how awful it is. And you just, I mean, I went to Italy last summer. It wasn't easy. I mean, not only did you have to fill in all these forms, you know, you had to queue for an hour or 2 hours at Stansted, but they managed it. They knew what was happening. I don't understand what's been happening for the last 5 months. It's not as though half-term has come, you know, it's not as though suddenly travel restrictions have been lifted. We've had no travel restrictions for months. Anybody has been able to go anywhere. God knows what the summer's going to be like.
One assumes it's a bit of a domino effect, isn't it? Because you've got people getting their compensation from when their travel was cancelled due to COVID and using it now, and then people who might have had their travel cancelled using it now, and it's just constantly kicking the can down the road, and that's just going to create more and more of a jam.
They knew these planes were going to be full. I mean, they've had months to try and sort it out. It's just not right. And I mean, there is backlog Britain has been going on for some years, right? I mean, this isn't the first time that you open the papers and there's travel chaos. But nothing seems to be done about it.
Yeah, no, and I wonder, where are these people? Did they evaporate? Where are all the people who are supposed to be handling baggages and working on aeroplanes and running the cafes in the terminals? Where have they gone?
Well, I think a lot of them were foreign and went home during COVID and frankly, either can't get here anymore because the immigration won't let them in. I mean, we do have a problem. I mean, you talk about the airport, try hospitality. I mean, they are absolutely desperate. I mean, there are masses and masses of jobs. Employers desperate to employ people in this country, and there just aren't. It's low level, you know, minimum wage working. Obviously, anybody who can move into a better job moves in.
Scarlett, thank you ever so much. Well, if you're stuck at an airport and losing your cool, you can always email me and vent. gbviews@gbnews.uk or angrily tweet us at gbnews. You're with GB News on TV and radio. Coming up, around 3/5 of 11 to 18-year-olds worry about their parents not having enough money. As the cost of living crisis rages on, could this affect the mental health of our children? Time for a short break now, but first, here's the weather.
Hello, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather updates. It's another day of heavy showers, particularly across eastern parts of England, southeast Scotland. There's some spots seeing some sunny spells, but it's on the cool side. High pressure is nearby, but low pressure is sitting right over us, allowing the air to rush up through the skies and create the heavy showers. Not many isobars on the chart, so again the winds are light, so again the showers are slow moving. Heavy ones particularly across the borders of Scotland, down into northeast England, down towards Lincolnshire. Some thunderstorms likely in this zone, but heavy showers elsewhere as well. Not many for South Wales and southwest England. Here, many places having a dry, fine afternoon with sunny spells, and here we could get to 17 or 18, but generally temperatures only in the mid-teens. A lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, turning quite damp here through the rest of the day, and that wet weather will then march its way slowly towards parts of Wales and northwest England overnight. The heavy showers in eastern areas will continue well into the evening before tending to fizzle out in most places as we head towards dawn. And again, it's not going to be a warm day, so overnights with clear skies it's going to be quite chilly with temperatures well down into single figures. Another fresh start then on Wednesday. Some sunshine around early on, but this zone of cloud and showers over the Midlands, northwest England will work again to the east. So by the afternoon, it will once more be eastern parts of England that see a lot of heavy showers. A drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And again, not many showers for Wales and southwest England. So many western areas largely dry tomorrow with some sunny spells. But again, in the east, there will be showers. And again, they will be on the heavy side, and temperatures in most places only in the mid-teens. The showers will fade somewhat through Wednesday evening, which leads into things turning a bit drier as we head towards the long weekend. Drier and with some sunshine, a bit warmer, not completely free from showers, however. Bye for now.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Kids are like sponges, aren't they? Accidentally slip out a swear word in front of little Luke, and he'll no doubt yell it on repeat in the middle of Tesco. But all the catastrophic clickbait headlines we've been drugged on are having a profound effect on children. They're harrowed by the climate crisis, giving them night terrors that the planet is about to burst into flames. Then they're bombarded with the horror that their family would be wiped out by disease. Now, they probably lie awake at night, worried the family might starve. Apparently, 93% of children are aware of the cost of living crisis, with 2/3 of them scared their parents might not be able to buy things. It's also a fact that money worries are still the biggest reason for families breaking up. So what can families do to make the pinch seem like a cinch? We're Head of Policy and Research at Action for Children. Jo Lane joins me now. Now, Jo, Action for Children authored that report. What's going on here, and how worried should we be about children worrying about the cost of living crisis? It seems like a strange position to take.
Yeah, so at Action for Children, we help hundreds of thousands of families, children and young people every year. And if you spoke to anyone working in one of our frontline services, they will tell you that, absolutely they see on a day-to-day basis children worrying about finances and, their families seeing that worry and being concerned what it will do, as you mentioned, to their mental health and in terms of how it gets in the way of, their development and just enjoying their life as they should do. As we want all of our children to. I think the big message from this research and from lots of other research is that the government has done a great deal to support household finances over the last few weeks, actually, but certainly in the last few years. We at Action for Children don't think there's been enough specifically targeted towards families with children. So it's families with children who are, most likely to be in poverty, most likely to be in fuel poverty, most likely to be struggling to put food on the table. But there hasn't been a specific package that says, from the government, we see, we know it costs more to raise children than it does to, for other families. And here's our specific package. And the best way government can do that is invest in something called the child element of universal credit. So that's the bit of universal credit that only those families with children get. And that gives you your best bang for your buck in terms of getting money into the pockets of those, mums and dads looking after their children, struggling to put food on the table, as we're all hearing, in recent weeks and months.
Yeah, I'd assume you therefore back the call that's come out today for more free school meals for children.
Yeah, so I think, government has this sort of range of levers it can pull and packages it can offer families with children to support them financially. When you look at the sort of those groups of families who are on sort of, you would say are in poverty, so they're those very low income families. If you want to sort of, for each pound you spend, if you want to lift as many children as you can out of poverty to make sure those families, meet that baseline level that we want everyone to be above, and that means they're more likely to be able to afford the food they need to keep the heating on as when we do go into winter. The best way to do that is to invest in those child-related benefits, and the big one is that child element of universal credit.
Jo Lane, Head of Policy and Research, Action for Children, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Well, former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire is still with me. Scarlett, now I'm going to put a cat amongst the pigeons here. I didn't grow up in the wealthiest family at all. I wore my mum's hand-me-downs. They used to call me granny fashions at school. I remember having to sit out school trips and car-sick-inducing long car journeys to North Wales for holidays. And it does strike me that today people think that things like smartphones and family holidays abroad and subscription television are all human rights. And am I just being a little bit grouchy here, or do I think that, the old sort of make, do, amend culture could do with being mended once again?
I think it depends what families you're talking to. I mean, I think that certainly there are a lot of middle-class kids who go, why can't we afford this? Why can't we afford this? And the parents go, no. But what he was talking about was children who actually are really worried about the parents. I mean, we both remember, because I was a make, do and mend child as well, I knew that my parents didn't have enough money. There were 5 kids. We never dressed properly. We never did anything. I mean, we certainly had enough food. I'm not trying to pretend. But actually, I was very aware that my parents were not as well off as a lot of their peers. I think that actually for these children who live, who are worried about whether their parents are eating enough, who are worried, who are cold, that's what he's really talking about. And of course, you're brought up with that thing about being poor and always knowing, because quite often, particularly the mother, will give things up so that the children can have it, including meals.
Yeah, no, I do. I sympathise enormously. And I do think that we live in a bit of a throwaway society where we're constantly bombarded by people who have a lot, whether it's Instagram, TV programmes. It's really tough for kids today.
Yeah, no, it's really tough for kids who have so little.
Yeah.
The kids who didn't have the laptops to be able to do their schoolwork over COVID.
Yeah.
It's just sort of two different worlds.
Yeah, the gulf is getting bigger, isn't it? Scarlett, thank you. You're with GB News on TV and DAB Radio. Coming up, what do you need to do to get onto the Queen's Birthday Honours List? Probably a lot of charity work, surely. Who do you think has made it this year? First, though, it's time for a check on the news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's exactly 2:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Chancellor says that the plan unveiled last week to help with the cost of living will make an enormous difference for the most vulnerable households. The consumer group Which, though, says more than 1 in 10 people have skipped meals due to rising food prices. Rishi Sunak says he's aware that these are difficult times, but believes millions of families across the country will benefit from the support put in place.
Last week we announced £15 billion of new support to help with the cost of living, with a third of all households, the most vulnerable, receiving around £1,200 in help. But there's also support available for everyone, including £400 off energy bills in the autumn. We said we would stand by the British people through this challenging time, and that's what we delivered last week.
The EU agreed last night to cut 90% of oil imports from Russia by the end of this year. The remaining 10% of the imports will be temporarily exempt from that ban, so that Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic will still have access to Russian oil. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen says that the EU plans to fully cut all imports in the near future. TUI Airways have announced they're cancelling 6 flights a day from Manchester Airport until the end of next month. Well, EasyJet and British Airways are also cancelling flights, while passengers at airports like Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester and Bristol are reporting long delays. The aviation industry is suffering from staff shortages after thousands were let go during the pandemic. At least 280 people have crossed the English Channel today in 8 small boats. After a lull in activity in recent days because of bad weather in the Channel, the first vessels were spotted just after 6 o'clock this morning today. The arrivals take the number of people who've crossed the Channel this year to almost 10,000. That's significantly higher than at the same time last year. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Do stay with us. Alex and We Need to Talk About will be back shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Nepotism. The country is riddled with it. You just have to turn on the beeb to see a conveyor belt of big names from broadcasting dynasties. And it only gets worse with politics. Those who are supposed to set an example at the top are the worst for ensuring noses in the trough for their nearest and dearest. While the annual honours list often reads like the who's who of who's buffed the shoes of the who's who. Now, I get that long political service may at times deserve to be rewarded, but when the PM's hairdresser is suddenly getting a gong, something's gone very wrong. Well, to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee, a host of acronym suffixes are about to be handed out, honouring those who have done extraordinary things. And while there will be plenty of unsung heroes recognised, there are bound to be a few eyebrows raised. So how does it all work? Well, Queen's Honours expert Leslie Hassell joins me. Leslie, great to have you on. I've always wondered how the system works. And, you know, sometimes you think, well, that's great. That person really does deserve to get a pat on the back, usually the unknown people. And then others you think, really?
Yeah, I know, Alex. Sometimes it looks as if the celebrities are getting all the headlines, and some of them may be great for some people, and others are thinking, well, not quite so sure. But I think actually sometimes with those famous people, we may not actually know what they're doing behind the scenes. They may be doing astonishing charity work that isn't actually getting the great headlines because it's very low key. And actually, the honour system does recognise some ordinary people doing extraordinary work. It's not just the famous names.
And who decides this? I mean, I don't think the Queen sits there in Windsor Castle and looks through the phone book and picks people at random. So who gets to nominate someone for an honours, and how does the sort of filtering system work? And does the panel decide who makes it and who doesn't? Then does the Queen sign it off? What is the process?
Yeah, really good questions. And ultimately, you have to be in it to win it. You might think that there's somebody you know who could be a great candidate, but they could spend years waiting for the letter to drop through their door onto the doormat, inviting them to accept an honour. And really, if you do know somebody who you think is worthy, then put them forward, nominate them. And if you're not sure if they have a realistic chance, talk to us at Awards Intelligence and we will give you a free and honest assessment. Our success rate is really good. It's 2 out of 3. compared to the 1 in 10 average for people who don't use our professional services. And the reason is we absolutely love what we do. And I love working with people to get recognition for somebody like the surgeon, the pioneering surgeon who is behind a world first in prostate surgery, or the entrepreneur who spent 30 years in a really high-powered job and then had a breakdown. And he spent the last 10 years working on mental health campaigns.
Now, when the celebs do get their gongs, who's putting them forward? Is this sort of a democratic process and it's sort of the general public saying, I think Sir Lewis Hamilton should be knighted? Or are there sort of people from the industry or people on panels who are nominating these people? Is there a diversity quotient? How does it work through the later stages of the process?
Sure. So the famous names will obviously come to attention of the powers that be. But out there, all those ordinary people doing extraordinary things, they need to be put forward. And there's an open system. It's a transparent system. It's on the government gov.uk government website, where there's a form, a nomination form that you can fill in. Now, it can be quite a lot of work. We will spend normally 100 or 150 hours putting together a nomination, because what you have to show, Alex, and this is the crucial thing, it's impact. You have to change things for the better. You have to make British society a better place. And if you can prove that you can do that, and that you have done that, with a really compelling nomination, then yes, your nomination goes first to the Cabinet Office, and then to one of 9 individual committees. For example, a doctor, their nomination will go to the Health Committee, a teacher, Education Committee. And then when they have made a decision, it goes to number 10, and then it goes to the Queen for rubber stamping. And Her Majesty and her advisors will cast their eye over that list to make sure that it does represent the best of Britain.
So, Leslie, final question. Who are the runners and riders for nominations, or actually for the actual gongs themselves, for honours this year?
Well, I would really like to see President Zelensky of Ukraine get an honorary knighthood. That man who absolutely outstanding leadership, incredible courage, and such an inspiration to people around the world. And then my favourite tip would be for Jimmy Anderson, the England cricketer, who has taken 600 test wickets, and no fast bowler has ever done that in the whole world. He's been playing for England for 20 years, so outstanding achievement. And then let's take somebody who's young, a 19-year-old woman, Zara Rutherford, who has become the first woman to fly solo around the world, and she did it in a microlight. What's amazing about her is that part of her motivation is to use her achievement to inspire girls and young women to take up maths and tech and engineering subjects. So full credit to her. I'd also like to see Rachel Blackmore, the jockey, who was the first woman to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup in March, after being the first woman to win the Grand National last year. So why on earth not an honorary award for Rachel Blackmore?
I'm disappointed you didn't say me. Leslie herself, thank you so much, from the Queen Honours experts there. Well, Scarlett Maguire is still with me. Scarlett, are you for the honours stuff? Do you think it's sort of the celebs get too many of the headlines? And actually, the whole point of this is surely rewarding people who've given their life to service.
No, I'm completely with you. I mean, what has Sir Mick Jagger done for the world? I mean, he's great. He's a multi-millionaire. He's great fun. But I mean, honestly, has he ever done anything for anybody else? I just think I think honours should be special, and I think they're for people who don't have another way of being honoured. And that's the problem with celebs, is you think, you don't need it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then as soon as we get to the really top honours, so the ordinary people get MBEs and OBEs, once it goes up and you go, they're friends of Boris, they're nominated by Keir Starmer, you know, the Queen puts her people in who are all born in the right places. I mean, call it icky is pretty marvellous.
Yeah, no, and I've seen firsthand some promises made by politicians that shouldn't have been made, that's for sure. Scarlett, thank you ever so much. I want to know your views. Should I be nominated? Of course you're saying. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at GBNews. Now, you are what you eat. It's an adage that's been chewed over for decades. A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips and all that. But obesity is now a major public health crisis. Despite all the warnings, we are getting fatter, sicker, and apparently sadder as we are increasingly hooked on overly processed, additive-laden junk that may taste arguably like the best thing on earth, but is guaranteed to add to your girth. Well, as a diet bore, having ditched the sugar and carbs 2 years ago, I am happy to evangelise about a new report that shows the protein-focused diet, increasingly supported by doctors, scientists and nutritionists around the world, and fast becoming the bane of the big food industry, actually has major benefits to cutting anxiety, depression and mental health disorders. Something else which has evidently crept up, along with the nation's weight. Well, consultant cardiologist and co-founder of Action on Sugar, Dr. Aseem Malhotra, joins me now. Aseem, great friend of mine indeed. Tell me about this research. I mean, I followed your diet and happily lost weight and happily got happier. But what is the connection here between following that kind of diet and mental health?
Yeah, I think, Alex, first of all, just to give things perspective, this mental health crisis, if you like, is a big, really important issue. So what many people won't be aware of is that having mental illness generally knocks off about 10 years to your life expectancy. If you have severe mental illness, specifically bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, on average, that knocks off about 20 years. And one of the main reasons for that is the primary cause of death is actually cardiovascular disease. So then we take a step back and think, well, actually, what's going on here? Of course, many of these people with these sorts of conditions will have unhealthy lifestyles, whether it's diet or smoking, alcohol. Chronic psychological stress, of course, is a huge problem when it comes to morbidity from mental illness. But what's really interesting, this fascinating, emerging, very important area of research shows that the root causes linked to these conditions, as you've mentioned already, severe mental illness type disorders, even anxiety, is rooted in insulin resistance and chronic inflammation and neurotransmitter dysregulation. So what happens in the brain essentially is if you adopt a diet, and this is where the emerging research is coming, and I've been involved in some preliminary research with the pioneer of the metabolic psychiatry unit in Stanford called Dr. Shabani Sethi, is that ketogenic diet seems to have a big impact both on cardiovascular risk factors in these people, but also in reducing or improving their psychiatric scores. So I think this is a really important area moving forward. So, I think the message is clear. I tell this to patients, I tell this when I give lectures, that you can't have optimal physical health without having optimum mental health, and you can't have optimum mental health without having optimal physical health. So it's about a heart and mind connection.
How much of this is sort of drawn into the fact that if you have a diet that's quite high in sugar and carbohydrate, you get more cravings? And then people who feel anxious and depressed are more prone to comfort eat as well. And they end up in a situation where they're just overeating. That could then compound the fact that they look in the mirror and don't like what they see.
Yeah, no, it's a vicious cycle. You're absolutely right. But I think this is slightly separate because when you look at the root cause, the pathobiological processes, if you like, that cause the damage to the cells and affect the brain, they are rooted in insulin resistance and chronic inflammation, which are driven predominantly by these sorts of diets. A high glycemic index carbohydrates, sugar, and the ketogenic diet has been shown in lots of research that's accumulating to have an impact in a positive way for these patients.
Well, let's quickly break this down because people might be sitting at home hearing your wonkish terminology and thinking, what does all that mean? What are you saying people should eat and what are you saying they shouldn't eat?
Yeah, so I think the message, we have to keep repeating the same message again and again and again, and especially until the government hear it as well. Because ultimately, people's choices are actually structured by forces beyond their control, so exposure to the unhealthy commodities. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about ultra-processed food. More than half of the calories in the British diet is coming from foods that are really detrimental to health because they are a mixture of sugar and fat and starch, and they have the worst impact on hormones that are involved in these disease processes, specifically insulin and glucose. So eliminate those sorts of foods. Eat real food. The message is very clear. Meat and 2 veg was supposed to be the staple British diet. It's actually a very, very healthy diet. But we've shifted away from that, and people are eating predominantly junk food, mainly because that's what's most available to them, what's cheapest, the food industry target the most vulnerable members of the population, children, for example, through marketing, these junk foods. So we have to think about the exposure to this, but also for the individual, what can they do to empower themselves is just really cut out the ultra-processed foods and the low-quality carbohydrates, the breads, the pastas, the rice. They need to be minimized.
Asim, thank you. Well, I'm delighted to say the Director of Metabolic Psychiatry Clinic at Stanford University, the aforementioned Dr. Shabani Sethi, joins us now. Dr. Shabani, fantastic to have you on the programme. This is really interesting research, and I think that however much news programmes and people are starting to push the fact that diet is so vitally important for health and now mental health, people aren't listening. So what would you say to people watching at home of why would changing your diet and getting rid of a lot of carbs and sugars actually help you be happier as well as help you lose weight?
Yeah, thank you for having me. What I would say is that when we're talking about how nutrition affects the brain, we really want to think about, and metabolism, we really want to think about how it actually affects the structure and function of the brain. So reducing sugar, reducing ultra-processed foods and refined carbohydrates actually has been shown in research to change the structure and function of the brain. So when we look at fMRI data, when we're looking at imaging, they're actually functional connectivity that actually increases when we improve our diets. So the ketogenic diet specifically is something that we're studying because we know that it dampens the reward response with dopamine. When you were talking about food addiction or emotional eating, some of that is also related. And if we think about the brain, it's a delicate balance of neurotransmitters or chemical messengers, but it's also, we need proper speed of transmission of signals. We need things to be communicating correctly and working, and we need fat. So the amount of omega-3s or the amount of fat that you have, this idea of having low calorie, low fat nutrition, we're actually doing a disservice for our brain and for our mental health. And a lot of research has been showing now that with mental illness, we see deficits, energy deficits, brain energy deficits, which includes mitochondrial dysfunction. Asim mentioned the neurotransmitter imbalance as well as insulin resistance, but we also see oxidative stress. So that environmental stress and burden on the cell is also something that we see, as well as inflammation, which we want to reduce. And so ultimately, metabolic psychiatry is looking at treatment of metabolic dysfunction to improve psychiatric outcomes as well as metabolic health outcomes. In fact, in those with depression or other illnesses, mental illness, we actually see 40% who are insulin resistant. And even if you don't have any psychiatric condition at all, history-wise, you still have double the risk of, if you have insulin resistance, you have double the risk of getting depression. So we have to start caring about metabolism.
Dr. Sethi, thank you so much for coming on and elucidating this super important topic. It's something I push a lot, or when I can on this programme, because I certainly feel far better for having gone keto. Now, Scarlett, we were discussing this, weren't we, just before going on air, and I know people must find me an absolute bore, but I didn't find it too difficult to ditch carbohydrates, not by following a ludicrous diet, not by sort of being a zealot about it, but doing what Asim said and having a lot more vegetables, a lot more fresh fish, meat, dairy, fat is important. But do you think that we've all been sort of sold a pup for the past 20 years? Because it's all been about pasta's the thing that's healthy and, carbohydrates and fat is bad. It turns out it's not.
Well, I mean, that's the problem, is that if you're you've read up a lot about it. If you're me, you read in the papers, and every week, I mean, frankly, if you read the Daily Mail, every week there's a new enemy, Clearly, refined sugar is bad for you. I mean, over the years, I have cut out so much, and every time it just seems to, I mean, I don't have sugar on my cereal, I gave up tea, all of that stuff. But it's, one listens to you on your diet, and I think of how much I love pasta, and then I think about chocolate. I mean, it's just, it's not easy. And I think what Asim said about just eating real food. I mean, I think if you begin there, then everything's easier, instead of saying, I have to completely give up all these dreadful things. But there is There is no question about sugar being dangerous. I mean, you know, we all know about a sugar rush and then you go down. I mean, they're completely right and we have to take it seriously.
I couldn't agree more. Well, in the olden days, they called it the "and finally" slot. After traumatising viewers for a solid 25 minutes of doom, gloom and despair, you treat them to prize-winning patios or dogs on surfboards. Well, here on We Need to Talk About, we think laughter is the best medicine. So, if you've been distressed by today's stories, or if you're about to set off for the airport wondering how you're going to afford the sandwich that will make you mentally ill, stay tuned for this. Get climate change and pesticides scrambling bees' brains, the biggest threats to our fragile ecosystem could well be your adorable purring puss, because it's likely your fuzzy little feline friend, all nuzzles and cuddles by day, becomes a rampant crepuscular killer. Research by Reading and Royal Holloway Universities estimates moggies are murdering in the hundreds of millions every single year. Each urban puss slays an average 15 little creatures, with double that for country cats. And while dogs aren't allowed to tear about the place on killing sprees, cats are. One town in Germany has even ordered kitties be incarcerated over the summer. Now, I've long been a proponent of bringing back the dog licence, and despite being a cat mother, I wouldn't disagree with regulating that too, because it's bonkers. Some people have multiple moggies and let them mate at will. As a responsible animal lover, my little beast is locked up at night. And the one time she dared look at a baby bird, she got a strict telling off. But her advanced ratting skills are not being discouraged anytime soon, and anyone living in central London would tell you that sort of pest control is necessary. Now, apparently, fish in Florida have been found to be drugged up on antidepressants. So widely are they knocked back by Yanks in thaw to their therapists. Before you roll your eyes at America's love of prescription meds, our waters are hardly better. We're blighted by trans fish. Oh, that's right. So many women now take the pill that excess estrogen in rivers is turning male fish female. And alongside intersex fish, we have starlings on Prozac and coked-up eels. Sounds like the menagerie of genetically modified doom is only just around the corner. Meanwhile, the average sperm count in men has halved. So it's only a matter of time before the zombie zoo takes over. Scarlett, anything there?
After that,
quite animal themed. Anything there you want to get your teeth into?
Well, I was thinking that actually cats might be killing all these things, but in my garden, I mean, it's foxes. I mean, you hear them at night killing things. I mean, the foxes of North London just take over. You walk back from the pub, there's a fox, and it looks at you, what are you doing on my pavement?
Well, there you go. You just need to genetically modify the cats to make them big enough to chase the foxes.
Absolutely. Problem over.
Solved. Yeah. Are you a pet owner?
No, I've had a dog. I mean, I'm allergic to cats. I do like them. I've brought many home as a child, but they were really bad for me. I am a dog owner, and I do think it terrifies me how many people I know who got dogs during the.
I know. I kind of think there's too many pets in Britain these days.
Yeah.
Sounds very sort of, what's the word? Like Grinchish of me, but I do think there's a surplus. Scarlett, it's been lovely having you in the studio today. We've had some fun, haven't we? That's all I've got time for. Join me again for We Need to Talk About on GB News at the same time, 2 o'clock tomorrow. Coming up next, it's The Briefing with Darren McCaffrey. First, though, it's time for the weather forecast. Bye-bye.
Hello, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather updates. It's another day of heavy showers, particularly across eastern parts of England, southeast Scotland. There's some spots seeing some sunny spells, but it's on the cool side. High pressure is nearby, but low pressure is sitting right over us, allowing the air to rush up through the skies and create the heavy showers. Not many isobars in the chart, so again the winds are light, so again the showers are slow moving. Heavy ones particularly across the borders of Scotland, down into northeast England, down towards Lincolnshire. Some thunderstorms likely in this zone, but heavy showers elsewhere as well. Not many for South Wales and southwest England. Here, many places having a dry, fine afternoon with sunny spells, and here we could get to 17 or 18, but generally temperatures only in the mid-teens. A lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, turning quite damp here through the rest of the day, and that wet weather will then march its way slowly towards parts of Wales and northwest England overnight. The heavy showers in eastern areas will continue well into the evening before tending to fizzle out in most places as we head towards dawn. And again, it's not going to be a warm day, so overnight with clear skies, it's going to be quite chilly with temperatures well down into single figures. Another fresh start then on Wednesday. Some sunshine around early on, but this zone of cloud and showers over the Midlands, northwest England will work again to the east. So by the afternoon, it will once more be eastern parts of England that see a lot of heavy showers. A drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And again, not many showers for Wales and southwest England. So many western areas largely dry tomorrow with some sunny spells. But again, in the east, there will be showers. And again, they will be on the heavy side, and temperatures in most places only in the mid-teens. The showers will fade somewhat through Wednesday evening, which leads into things turning a bit drier as we head towards the long weekend. Drier and with some sunshine, a bit warmer, not completely free from showers, however. Bye for now.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're